Alright, welcome back to Math and More. We're on lesson 2-4. I'm a poet and didn't even know it. So funny. Anyway, lesson 2-4, it's adding and subtracting decimals if you're following along in your math expressions. If you're not following the math expressions program, it's adding and subtracting decimals. Pretty easy. Just like adding and subtracting whole numbers, really, except you have to remember the decimal points. You got to line them up, as easy as getting a cool sip of water. That wasn't my favorite one. This one, I like this one.
Well, yes.
That's the one I like.
Give me a Y, give me an E, give me an F. Yeah!
Alright, here's a couple problems that are similar to the ones you'll see in tonight's homework. We're adding decimals, and actually adding decimals, subtracting decimals, they're pretty easy. It's just like regular old whole number adding and subtracting. You just have to remember the decimal, obviously. When you see a problem written horizontally like this, I always like to change it to vertical. I think it's much easier to add or subtract decimals vertically. So I would change 0 and 8/10. Here's the only tricky part. You have to line up your decimal points. So this is going to be 0 and 5/100. That's how you set it up. Don't fall into this trick. Let me get rid of this one here. Don't do 0.8 and you put the 5 here because you want the 5 to be under the 8, kind of like that, because that looks easier, because that would be 3, something like this. Doesn't work. Don't do that. Don't line them up. You got to line up your decimal points. Don't fall in that trap. Once you have the decimal points lined up, you can add a placeholder, because this changes the value not at all. It's just a placeholder. 0 does not change the value. And now I can do simple addition. 5 plus 0, 8 plus 0, bring down the decimal point. There you go. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Just remember, line up those decimal points. That's the key. Here's another example that you might see in the addition. One step harder. You got a whole number, the number 19, and a decimal, 1 and 4/100. Now, in the number 19, even though it's a whole number and you don't see a decimal, we've learned that the decimal point's always there. It's just hidden. It's right here. You don't always write it. Like if it was $19, it would be 19.00 to make it dollars. The decimal point's always at the end of a whole number. You won't see it, but you know it's there. You need to know that because when you line up vertically, the number 19 and 1 and 4/10, you have to have that decimal, so you know where to put this decimal for 1 and 4. I said tenths, I meant hundredths. Yep. Don't fall into that trap that we did on the other one where you just put the 19 and I don't know how you would do this, 104, something like that. Don't fall into that trap because that would mess you all up. So you line up those decimals. That's the key to success here. Add your placeholders. That does not change the value. And add it. You got a 4, 0. Put the decimal point in a nice straight line. 9 plus 1 is 10. And you got an 11. What did I do wrong there? That was really silly. See, everybody makes mistakes. I could choose to stop this video and redo it, or just say, hey, I made a mistake. That's a 2, not an 11. And that's what I'll tell you. Everybody makes mistakes. I made one too, but I fixed it, so we're good. Alright, there's how you do an addition one. Let me show you subtraction. Subtraction's a little bit harder. Not terrible. Alright, we got 2 and 6/10 minus 1 and 49/100. Same deal. Line up those decimal points. So I'm going to put the 2 and 6/10 on top. And I'm going to line up my decimal point, 1 and 49/100. And this is a subtraction problem. Here's the trap, and I'll put a placeholder. Here's the trap. People might look at this one and go, okay, this is 3 numbers, and then this is 2 numbers, and you set up like that and forget about the decimals. Don't fall in that trap. That's not how you do it. You got to keep those decimals in mind. Now, the only difference here is this is subtraction, so we have to do some borrowing, but you borrow just like it's a whole number. So I can't do 0 minus 9. I can borrow from the 6. That's 5. Bring over a 10. We have 10 now. 10 minus 9 is 1. 5 minus 4 is 1. Bring down the decimal. As long as these line up, you're good. Line them up. Adding and subtracting decimals, not too bad. Just like adding and subtracting whole numbers, really. All you have to do is remember, line up the decimal points. See, check it out. Line up the decimal points and add placeholders. Check it out over here. Line up the decimal points and add placeholders. You should do just fine. Oh, good old H2O. I love water too. Just like these guys. Just like him. Just like him. Just like him. Like him.
That was